Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Alex. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Sober podcast, episode something, series something.
I have no idea either now. It's so funny. I wish people could actually see what goes on before we start a podcast because we're like, oh, let's do this, let's do this. And then I'm terrible because I want to start something new. Lisa really needs to focus on the one thing we're doing. And then I usually distract her and then she gets distracted. And then we end up with like 3 minutes before our guest comes.
No, I was like, honestly, I was like, come on, it's 21 minutes past. And then I'm looking at Alex, guys, and she's got a phone to her ear. And I'm like, what are you doing? She went, nothing. I said, you've got your phone to your ear. No, nothing. And then what she'll do is she'll sneakily tell me something, right, that needs doing just before she presses record. And then I sit here with an anxious feeling in my chest that I've got to go and do it the whole episode.
We've
Like, I'm like,
both got anxiety in different ways, haven't we? Like different
yeah,
anxieties about it. What is wrong with us?
it's just crazy. It's
But it's
oh,
not, it's chaotic. So we come on and we both got, if you can see us, if anyone was starting this on YouTube, you can see us and we both look like shell shocked and like we're finding something amusing, which we are.
when we press record, you mean? Because we
Yeah.
and then it was
You've not
record.
changed your
And then
name.
Alex goes, "Hi, Lisa." Like,
I've just noticed you've not changed your name as well. You better change it for
I
the
was
guest.
literally doing it, Alex, doing it, and then I got distracted
Oh,
again.
so anyway, I just wanted to talk to you today, right, about Ash Wednesday. Right.
Right?
So Ash Wednesday it is today, which is
Yeah.
late in the year because people think it's like, well, it is the day after Pancake Day, a day after
Well,
Shrove
yeah,
Tuesday.
that's the bit I know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know when I was a kid, I always thought Ash Wednesday was because you were cleaning your pan.
Yeah, because it was like all ashy.
Ashy.
I used to have nightmares when I was little about little ash men.
Oh, I remember
I get a
that.
recurring nightmare of like little. So when you said that, then I imagined all these little ash men that used to throw me down like cliffs. But I was like a tall thing to these little ash men, and I'd just go boom boom down these cliffs because they weren't as big as anyway. Go on,
Was it
moving on.
scary though? Was
Oh,
it scary?
yeah, it was awful. Like I always had nightmares, and weirdly, because we're going to be talking about this with our guests going forward, but about people with lower dopamine can dream a lot more.
Oh, that's weird because I was just going to say I had a really vivid night last night of scary dreams, and one of them had like somebody outside a house, my auntie's old house, with a gun, and it was really scary. Like he was trying to get in. It was horrible.
Oh no, I don't like scary. I
Is
dream a
that right?
lot
Lower
really well.
dopamine, more dreams.
Apparently, yeah.
Well, you go
And I
through
often
phases in the month, don't you? Especially as a woman, you cycle different amounts of dopamine. So maybe it's just my cycle.
Yeah, it could be. It just when I found that out though, it did make sense to a lot of my childhood because I've always dreamt a lot, and I had a lot of night terrors when I was younger.
Yeah.
But looking back at it now, having ADHD and a dopamine deficiency could have been why all the dreaming, which is quite
You
interesting.
have
So
dreams, don't you? When you're pregnant, vivid dreams. Do you know one of the reasons I knew I was pregnant when I have been is because I start dreaming. Oh, I hope. No,
real.
I'm definitely not, by the way.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
that would be awful.
imagine.
Let's not go there with that. I think it's the opposite end. I think I'm coming out of my hormone phases. Although it would be the second time this week that it's flashed in my head because my mother-in-law did ask me if I've got, I quote, a secret bun in the oven
Why did she ask you that?
because I was going on about weight gain.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, and no, I haven't. So yeah. What was I gonna? Oh yes, Ash Wednesday. So tonight at the church, right, on the service, we get ash painted in a cross on our head, and it marks
Yeah.
the start of Lent. So today's the start of Lent. So there's a
Yes.
lot of chat in our members group, isn't there, about giving stuff
Yeah.
up for Lent and what we're
Yeah.
gonna do. So I have decided, and I'm doing this. I'm not doing it like a dry January where you give something up and punish yourself for months. I'm
No.
um I'm doing no refined sugar
Yeah.
for the whole of Lent. And the reason I'm choosing Lent to do it is because, yes, it is something I want to do, but I will crave it enough that I'll be able to reflect on the reasons behind Lent. So I'm actually going to do it in line with church this year for the first time properly.
That's quite cool. Do you think it'll help as well, knowing that there's lots of other people doing similar things?
Maybe. And it's just reminded me of that meme that keeps coming up where it says, me and my best friend at the gates of heaven because hell kicked us out. So are you giving anything up? Not necessarily for Lent.
No, we spoke about this, on our last podcast, if you remember, and I was like, no, no. But what I did like, somebody on my Facebook posted a thing from the oh my gosh, Salvation Army, and they'd put a note out, and it was saying, instead of giving things up for Lent, could you get rid of one item from your household and put it into a bag and give it to charity? So one item every single day of Lent.
That's a nice idea.
I know. Well, so I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. That's such a good idea. But then I realized I'd had massive clean out the other week, and I've already given like 4 massive bags to the charity shop.
Done Lent. You've done Lent in a day.
Now, I know, but I think I'm going to try it. I did have this pair of jeans that I really didn't want to give away because they fit so nice and they feel so nice. But I put my foot, through the hole in the knee.
Oh yeah.
And I put it through, and so it's got the holes like too big in the knee.
Which will be nice if you didn't know they weren't meant to be like that in the first place.
Yeah. So like they're just so nice, but I won't wear them because it's just like a bit, somebody with bigger knees needs to wear.
Well, it's funny because Anita, who's one of our members and our ambassador, this morning I was talking to her about Lent, and she said that she should have given away a pair of trousers every single day because she'd still have 40 odd pairs at the end of it.
Oh,
yeah. Well, she's just like a clothes hoarder. And also congratulations to you, Anita, because by the time you listen to this, you've just hit 3 years of sobriety. Well done.
Oh, that's just so, you know what I love as well with Anita hitting that 3 years. She's somebody that remembers her early days so well. She runs a Blooming Bees, they call it, on a Wednesday for the members only group. And it's for anybody more people in the earlier days, although they love it that much. You've got people in there now that's probably 1, 2, 3 years sober.
Because it was Baby Bees and there were that many people wouldn't go when they weren't a baby anymore. They changed the name to Blooming Bees.
So and I just think it's so good, and she really uses her knowledge and stuff over the last 3 years to help other people. So she's amazing, and well done, Anita.
And we love you.
And to anybody else out there celebrating a milestone as well, like
even a day, well done.
It is well done. Yeah.
And just a reminder, as one of our other members said in the chat, in the members only WhatsApp chat, Lent doesn't have to be about giving something up. You can add something in, so you can take up a new hobby or a new commitment. So if you're doing that, good luck with it and let us know how you get on.
I love the idea of that. And like you said before about I don't want to be punishing myself, because sometimes giving things up, we always see like a punishment. And actually, like with drinking, the benefits that you gain and all the stuff that you gain through giving up that one thing, everything you gain is so much more. I always remember somebody saying to me that if I was to have a drink now, it would be like I had to give back everything that I'd gained since I'd stopped drinking. And that's too much for me. And I'm like, oh my God, imagine if everything where you are now, you had to give it all back.
Oh, I couldn't do it. Even somebody was talking yesterday about having a hangover, and it was just enough to make me go, because she'd said how she'd had a hangover all day and it was that bad that she'd ended up having to have a glass of wine at midday just to take the edge off it. And just the thought of that was enough to make me go, I'm staying where I am. And I'm trying to do this with sugar as well, because actually the health benefits of cutting out sugar are going to be incredible. So
it is. And I think we've always said this and we use it in our sober experiment, don't we? But if you literally focus on all the positives and all the amazing things, and there's more and more and more, and they keep happening, like over 6.5 years sober, and still to this day, amazing things keep happening because I stopped drinking 6.5 years ago, like loads of things.
Yeah. I'm the same.
That
all
one
the time.
decision, it's just incredible, isn't it? And I've just got one thing more to say about this, actually, because I put a post on our Instagram the other day that said, have you ever woken up feeling clear-headed and well rested, but thought, oh God, I wish I had hangover today. Like,
it's so true.
you
It's
just
so
wouldn't
true.
do it. You
No.
wouldn't do it. So yeah, think about that, guys.
So let's get our guest in.
Yes. Who is it, Alex?
It's Scott Hanley, and he's on his way. He's joining the conversation. Hopefully now he should be putting his camera on. This is my commentary. I nearly said a commentation. My commentary as it happens. So he's putting the camera on. He's unmuting himself. Come on, Scott. Let's get you in here. Oh, he's not. Oh, he is.
Here we go. Boom. Okay. Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
hello.
Scott. How are you?
Listen, Alex, I'm really good. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's
Apologies if
brilliant.
anybody's watching this on video. I've got a hatchet wound to my head.
I know. What is that?
I was on a flight to, where was I? Flying to Newcastle upon Tyne a couple of days ago, and I won't bore you with the details, but there was this really cantankerous, grumpy old man in front of me.
You've C-bombed then. I thought.
No, come on. Like, we've only just met. That'd be too much. Anyway, as we hit the gate after landing, he got up and started rummaging around in the overhead lockers. And this fasten seatbelt sign wasn't off, and then the plane lurched forward another couple of meters, as it does sometimes. And doof, a suitcase that was in his hand, I broke the fall with my bald head. And
I don't know whether to laugh or be shocked. I'm so sorry.
I was pissing blood, and then everybody else was just trying to get off. It was a nightmare. So
that's awful. Like,
that is the worst time to have an accident on a plane, because nobody will care. They just want their bags and to get off that plane. That's like, oh, that's awful. Oh,
where there's blame, there's a claim, Scott. Just saying.
Well, it's my claim to fame with my mutilated head. Anyway, Lisa, Alex, hi, how are you? Lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet your listeners and viewers.
We're so really looking forward to this. Scott.
So have you ladies been chatting for the last 20 minutes about God knows what? And
we've just had 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
We didn't want to take away the reason we're here. So we've had a 5 or 10 minute conversation, and we actually had a little bit of a conversation about Lent and giving things up or adding things in, related it to alcohol, related it to sugar-free. And we had a bit of a conversation about dopamine and dreams as well. Right.
Are you allowed to add things in?
Well, why not?
Are you?
Yeah. You mean on Lent? Yeah, you're allowed to make a commitment to add something to your life, apparently.
Oh, you mean something good, something positive, not like chocolate?
Yeah, I don't think you're allowed to start drinking again from our perspective. That's not fair.
I'm going to start getting drunk for Lent.
What do you guys think about Lent and New Year's resolution, etc.?
It's a funny thing for me, because I don't know if you're aware, but I play the organ at a church. Everybody else is. They're sick of hearing about it. So I would have, if you'd have asked me that question a few years ago, I'd have been like, I don't do dry Januaries, which I don't. I don't do Stoptobers. I don't do anything and where you are set to give something up for a certain amount of time, because I feel it's a bit of a punishment to yourself, and it's Monday mindset for me is just really hard. I always feel you set yourself up for a fail. But this year, because it's something I want to do anyway, which is cutting out sugar, and also because I've done a lot more work around the religious side of things as part of my role, I feel like I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm doing it with Lent in mind, with the real meaning of Lent in mind. So for me this time, I'm okay with it.
Okay, that's cool. I hope you achieve what you want to achieve. I'm sure you will.
What about you? What do you think?
I don't know.
I'm not agree.
I'm not a big fan. Particularly New Year's resolutions. I think obviously we're going to come on to mindset in quite a amount of detail, I would imagine, over the next 30 minutes. But I think people just blandly and insipidly and with no real intent just go, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to whatever we're going to do, But if you haven't really given a lot of thought and you're not really intentional about that, then your brain isn't going to expect anything different. You know, your expectations don't change. So I think you're probably set up to fail. But anyway, I suppose that's where it starts, right? But
yeah. What about you, Lise? I think we've already kind of had the chat, but
Yeah. I've never really been successful in doing things like a dry January or a sober October or Lent, anything. I've always struggled with it. I think
you don't like challenges,
Sarah,
though, do you?
No, not really. No, I don't like anything that, well, I don't know. It depends. But no, I'm in two minds about it. I know some like dry Januaries, and we've got some members in our group that have done incredible by doing a dry January and kind of knowing that people are there doing it with them. I personally struggle a little bit with telling myself that I can't do something because I've got an inner rebel that says who's that wants to do the opposite. So yeah, I find them quite difficult. But when I do get my mind set on something, I'm very, very determined. But it's not usually when everybody else is doing it.
so basically, you don't like to be told what to do.
I definitely don't like to be told
that
what
makes
to do.
Yeah, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do is tell Lisa what to do when she already knows what she's doing, but she hasn't shared with you that she knows what she's doing. Because then she also gets the double whammy of, I knew that, but you didn't know I knew that. So you didn't think that I knew that.
So, right, I used to be a British Army officer. That sort of reminds me of MI6 or GCHQ. I have no idea what you just said. But anyway.
I'm not sure I could repeat it.
I've since an ADHD diagnosis, I've learned a lot of things about other things that are kind of connected. And one of them is PDA, they call it, which is pathological demand avoidance. And the more I've looked into that, the more I think, oh, yeah, maybe I do have that, because it is something that I struggle with. And I used to hold quite a lot of shame about it and feel silly about it, but actually now I'm learning more about myself, it makes more sense. But people telling me to do something in a certain way, like you said, you was in the army, I would really struggle with that. I struggle with my PT. Like if she doesn't tell me or give me positive praise and she says do this, my first gut reaction, I feel it build up inside. It's a physical feeling. It's not just me being a rebel. Somebody says do that, you do it. That's what I want to say. I just really struggle with it.
You don't want to even say it that nice though, do you?
No, it's not that. It's honestly, it's a physical feeling. It's a real thing.
You're pretty scary. I'm kind of a bit worried now about the next 30 minutes. Just could you repeat what PDA stands for? Because to me it stands for something very different.
Oh yeah, public display of affection. No, pathological demand avoidance, and it's where you feel anything that's a demand or somebody telling you something to do something, you struggle with. So say for instance, if I was like washing up and my partner said, Lise, will you do the washing up? And I was in the middle of doing it, it would make me mad. I'd be like, I'm doing it. And I'd rather throw the dishes and say, you do it, than it's weird. But it's a real thing.
Yeah, you're going to end up on a reality TV show, I'd say.
I hope not. I don't think I won't.
I said what I meant to say was you're definitely not going to be on a reality TV show.
Tell her not to do it.
Will. No.
Also, you're
mentioned Judy. Go on, Lisa. Go.
Let's get to you, Scott, because you've got such an interesting story, haven't you?
Thank you.
So let's start talking about it. So you have been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
That's right. 7.5 years ago, nearly.
7.5. That must have been a massive shock at the time. Like, how did you process that? Because if you don't mind me asking as well, like, what age was that then that you got diagnosed?
Yeah, so I was age 51.
Wow.
And, oddly, it wasn't really a big shock. I'd had sort of some symptoms. So my leg would stick or freeze, a few twitches in my hand. It was very early day symptoms for the disease. And then the medical process from GP to neurologist to brain scan to being told, that probably the flash to bang on that was, I would say, 3 to 4 months. And I think by the time I was formally told of my diagnosis, I think I was pretty sure I knew what it was. So the in the moment being told, other than the delivery of it, which is a story in itself, but other, in the moment, whenever I was told, no, it wasn't a, I was hit in the face or run over by a truck moment. But yeah, I mean, obviously, whenever it started to sink in, there, we had some dark moments. It's, I don't know if you know much about the disease, but it's a pretty brutal journey, and currently, and at time of diagnosis, it was regarded as an incurable degenerative neurological condition that they don't know how you get it, and of which there's no real effective treatment or cure. And you end up in a pretty shit state. I do quite a lot of work with people and mentor people and just support where I can. And I met face to face with a man in Ireland. He's we'll keep it anonymous, but normally whenever I have those initial conversations, people are all, want to know more about it. And he says, oh, no, I know quite a lot about the disease. My younger brother was diagnosed at the age of 30, which is really young. And he's at stage 5 and he's in full care in nappies. And I think I was more shocked to hear that, I just thought, God, I forget how awful this disease is, because I only got to a certain stage and then knocked it into reverse gear.
Talk us through a typical journey of somebody with Parkinson's. What would they expect? I mean, I know it's different for you and we'll come to you in a second, but what would start to happen? What were the initial symptoms and where does it end up? I mean, you've just pretty much touched on that now, but.
Yeah. Okay. So you want me just my understanding of the progression of the disease?
Yeah, and the speed of progression and kind of what will happen.
So I'm not medical. This is just my lived experience, but I'm pretty informed, and I do an awful lot of work in this field. So, but I want to say this is not a medical opinion.
Yeah.
And there is no typical journey. Everybody's journey is different, but typically, here's how it looks. So first of all, Parkinson's disease is where a part of your brain called your substantia nigra, it isn't working properly. It's not fit, strong, and healthy. So mine under a scan will look very different to your scan. And that part of the brain is responsible for basically the generation and the transmission of dopamine throughout my body, throughout everybody's body, every single part of my body. And a lot of people think about as dopamine being the feel-good factor. There's a lot of chat about it, kids on TikTok and, on screens, and there's the big dopamine rush and then there's the drop. So dopamine in this regard it's basically let's call my brain the computer. It's kind of like the command center, and it then sends out the instructions to all my various body parts for anything to do with movement. Okay. So, and I mean everything. So obviously, if I move my hands and go like that, which is was one of my tests that I failed very early on. But you're breathing, your lungs are moving at the minute, Lisa and Alex, and your digestive system is working. So there's always, everything needs movement. Okay. So that's what it is. It's basically where your computer that's sending out the command messages around your body, it gets a bit of a virus and there's no control alt delete system reset. There's 5 stages. Stage 1 being, the early stages. Stage 5 is the final stage, and where you're ended up in the terminal zone there. So early symptoms are going to be your hand starts to shake quite a bit. You might just get involuntary movements. Your legs mightn't work. Your gait, your walk starts to get a bit funny and a bit out of step. And then from stage 1 to stage 2, I can give you all the medical terms, but I'll avoid the medical terms. I'm happy to go into as much
I just
detail if
saw
you
the
want.
relief wash over Lisa's face. She was like, don't do that. Don't give me them.
No, you know what? I'd really like you to do, if you don't mind, because I know you'd said about like but could you do it in kind of from your stages, if you know what I mean? So like, what was it that you kind of noticed first, and then where did you? Do you know
Okay,
what I mean?
that's only a separate question, but I will personalize it until the point that my sit and stop, and then
Yeah,
I'll tell you about my knowledge beyond that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I started to get a bit of a twitchy hand, not permanent. It was normally whenever I was at rest, it was fairly predictable. So it just started twitching, no pain, no discomfort. I then would start to get leg cramps, and they got a bit worse. The moment when it was right, okay, stop ignoring this, go see a medical person, was I was walking and I went to turn right, just slow walking in an urban environment. And my body went to turn left. My body went to turn left, but my foot didn't. It was just stuck to the ground, you know.
Yeah.
So all the rest of my body was turning, but my foot just was stuck to the ground, static, didn't move, no pain, no discomfort. And you just stared at it and you're just going, shit, what's going on here?
Yeah,
And
that must have been really scary.
that was really weird. And, you know, it was only 6 or 7 seconds. And then, oop, like the car jolting, a bit like the airplane jolting.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I wasn't hit on the head of the suitcase. And I just kept on walking.
Oh.
So that was kind of the start of dyskinesia, bradykinesia, and my motor function starting to be not right. And it was at that point that I had a neurological assessment and a brain scan, and I then had my positive diagnosis. Over the next couple of years, my shakes got a lot worse. Still not permanent. I was still able to conceal them a large part of the time. It was fairly predictable. Normally, whenever you're at rest, it's the weirdest thing. Whenever you're busy, it tends not to, your body seems to override it. It's when you're at rest. There's a guy I had a chat with, a Dutch in Holland, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and he was really debilitated. And he used to play basketball to a really high level. And this guy was a complete shaky mess. And you walked on the basketball court and threw a basketball at him, it all went. And he just patted around. It's mad. And I've seen that happen in my gym with people who've come in and replicated what I've done. Anyway, so yeah, I started just being a lot more shaky. My gastro system wasn't good, so my digestive system wasn't good. I got really bad leg cramps. Because you think about it, everything that's being passed through your body, whether it's fluid, whatever it is, it needs a motor function. You just don't think about it. You know, as I'm looking at you, Lisa, here, your eyelid, you know, you're blinking, but it's not a conscious thing. The cramps were bloody awful, and fatigue would be a big part of it. Fatigue was an absolute killer. You know, to the extent my fatigue and my brain fog was that bad that I went for a clinical assessment for early onset Alzheimer's. Such was the symptoms. Thankfully, it was just fatigue. And then just your body's just going to start every aspect. So I had my hand, then it goes to your arm, and then maybe goes bilateral, so both sides of your body. Then, you know, your walk, you can't just go thinking about the army connection, left, right. It'll be left, right. And then you'll have a wobble and your legs will start going like jelly, and you just start body popping and dancing and going like Presley, just walking down the shopping mall. Yeah. And then no, I had this thankfully very infrequently, but thinking about body movement. So you can become incontinent. That would be quite common because obviously you're, you know, both bowel movements and urinary movements. That needs movement control. Speech then is it starts to get slurry. There's first woman I talked to extensively who ended up being featured in a lot of the same media that we did, and her speech would really come and go. And this is all because my brain and my dopamine, there either wasn't enough being pushed out or it wasn't being pushed out accurately. So, it was just a bit like your engine misfiring or stalling or having a bit of the splutter. The fuel and the juice going around it wasn't being pushed out. So that's kind of what goes on. And then if you just think slowly, every single thing starts moving, starts shaking, you don't have control over it. You can't consciously command your body to pick up a knife and fork and do stuff, and that just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then
can I just interrupt you there, Scott, just so that I and in your mind, do you know what you want your body to do and it won't do it, or does it all go? Can you not even think about what you want to do?
my understanding is that progresses as it deteriorates.
Right.
So if I understand your question correctly, part of my original neuro assessment was to do this, and I could only do 3. It was really weird. So I don't know if you can see it properly. Yeah. So if I do that, so on the right-hand side, I would do that to my arm, till my hand cramped. But, my initial assessment, I would just go that. And then I think I got 3 or 4 out. And then
it just held.
You just had no control over it. But you in your brain, you were looking at it thinking you were going to do the same thing, but no, the computer said no.
How frustrating.
So at this point, Scott, when like this is going on, you've had your diagnosis, and when you're thinking about it going forward, are you kind of thinking, well, this is it, there's nothing I can do about this? Is that, or do you get told there is things that you can do to?
No, that's a great question. So thank you for asking. You're absolutely made aware that, you're just going to progress and there is no cure. And you will, as the disease progresses, you will then be given medication. So it depends at what point you're diagnosed. I caught it pretty early and I was treated pretty early, but a lot of people I chat to, as soon as they were diagnosed, they were put on medication. Now, either they were at a more advanced stage or, different medical systems and different doctors. Some people just want to medicate the bollocks off everything, and that's the default. So I'm not going to be critical of the NHS because they do a fantastic job, and most of the work I do is with US, and it's just big pharma takes over. All right, here's a prescription. Sorry, what did you say was wrong with you? They literally just medicate the bollocks off everything. Anyway, rant over. So I then did not have medication, so that was pretty good. Sorry, I've lost my thread there. Can you repeat the question, Lisa?
I was asking about the progression, I suppose, and you kind of
the outlook.
Oh yes, the outlook. Yeah, no, the outlook is pretty grim because they are very upfront and just saying, look, we've no idea what this is or how to treat it, and the only real treatment is they give you medication,
right?
And the purpose of that medication is could be one of 2 things or both. One will be like an artificial dopamine, so they're putting more dopamine hopefully into the body part, or the other aspect of the medication could be maybe not adding dopamine, but it's working on the neurotransmitters, so it's kind of working on the software. And
what's the expectation of that medication then? Because I know you're saying that, but if they're saying it's just going to get progressively worse and then they're medicating you anyway, but it's still going to get worse, I guess
it's just prolonging health, is it?
Yeah, is that what it is?
No, it is very effective. It's very effective at suppressing the symptoms. There's called what is referred to as on time and off time. So anybody that's quite advanced with Parkinson's symptoms and they're dependent on the drugs are efficient. They are effective. Right. So there's a guy in Portugal. It doesn't matter. A few people that I've worked with, that I've stayed in touch with and mentor over the last couple of years. There's a couple of them that said, okay, so my symptoms what you've experienced hasn't been my experience, but my on time is longer. So what I mean by that was he basically, his whole life was in 4-hour cycles. So let's say he took his medication at 12 noon. He knew then by 12:30, he wouldn't be a complete mess. He would have good control over being able to work, or maybe just to make food or prep or dress. But then at the end of that 4-hour cycle, so at the end of the on time, then he would know like things would start to get a bit shaky and a bit wobbly again. And he would then go into, more medication and start that 4-hour cycle. So I know it's very, very effective. And I know people that where their symptoms haven't reversed, they haven't experienced what I experienced, they have extended their on time, for which they were very grateful. So it depends where you are in the journey. And one man I spoke to said, it's great. I now have a 6-hour on time. I can play golf with my son, So that makes me feel a wee bit of an imposter and a bit of a shit. Am I giving people false hope here? But we'll come on to that, because once I was told at the time by 3-year-olds that they weren't aware of anybody in the Western world having reverse symptoms. I now know that with the extensive work that I've done, I now know that that's not the case. And, I'm not on my own. There are other people who've done that. In fact, Yale University Medical School, so Yale Medicine, put out a report about 2 years after my experience, and they confirmed that certain types of exercise and other aspects of mental health and lifestyle choices, they confirmed that Parkinson's symptoms were reversed. So I'm a freak in many ways, but I'm not a freak in this. I'm not some mad guys making up.
Not the only one.
No, thankfully I'm not.
Before you go on to what you did to reverse those symptoms then.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about that moment, the moment where you thought, you know what, there's got to be more that I can do here, and this is what I'm going to do. How did that come about, and what were you thinking in those times?
Yeah, I think there's 2 moments I wanted to discuss briefly to answer that question. You asked a few minutes ago about, was this a real kick in the teeth, and was I really pretty shell shocked by the diagnosis? And the answer is no. No, I didn't do anything about the physical symptoms. We'll come on to it. That's the second part of my answer. But there's something I definitely did do consciously a couple of weeks after my diagnosis. I got my formal diagnosis. It was like 4 to 6 days before Christmas. The kids were back from university, family home, Belfast. One daughter was in Glasgow. The other daughter was in Durham. So we kind of ignored it and parked it to make sure we all enjoyed Christmas. Anyway, but the one thing that I did do very consciously, and thank God I did, I now know the importance of that moment. I declared that there was no way I was going to let this disease define me or dictate my life. Now, that was a mental choice. That wasn't how can I fix this? But that was right, no, I'm not going to always go to the negative bias. I'm not going to just surround myself with anxiety and stress, etc., etc. And that was a very, very conscious action that I did in the moment. Mm-hmm. And then, so the second part to answer, which is probably really more where your question lies. I don't know why, but I fucked around for about 2-3 years, just getting worse, and didn't act on it.
And so you said you weren't gonna go that way, but then you didn't do very much about that for the first.
Well, I didn't change my mental fortitude and resilience on it.
Right.
My symptoms were getting worse, but I didn't get depressed or sad or anxious about it. So from that point of view,
I get you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anyway, so I sort of actually was starting to stumble. So my symptoms were getting worse, and just like basically things like putting a key in my lock. It was a 2-handed effort. To try to do it with one hand, it was, oh, Jesus, you'd be there 20 minutes trying to get the key in the lock sometimes, Yeah. And but I did take 3 years to go, right, okay, is there nothing I could do about this? Because obviously conventional medicine tells me there's not, but I got to a point where I think probably my life was getting more intolerable. And I don't know why it took me that long. It's a shame I hadn't done that earlier, but it took me to get to a level where just life was starting to get really pretty shit that I then acted.
Yeah. I think that's the same with a lot of people when you hear of any sort of transformation or change that becomes significant. Sometimes we don't have to get to rock bottom, but yeah, we use certainly in our earlier podcast. You don't necessarily get to rock bottom in life, but sometimes you just have to see what it might look like and experience a little bit of where you're going to realize that actually I don't want to go down that road. So perhaps it just took that bit of time for you to sort of go, this is going to get worse. I need to kick myself now. I need to move.
Yeah, I
You
totally
know
agree.
what though? I'm sorry, I've just got to kind of say, like, that must have been so difficult, because I'd imagine, like, with talking to the doctors and people saying it's going to progressively get worse, like, I'd imagine that there'd be a point where you're like, right, I don't want this to affect me. I don't want it to define me, but my body is shutting down on me. It's doing all these things. And then how do you go from to even know what to try and do? So it's not just about having like the mental attitude of going, right, I'm not going to let this define me. You've then, I imagine, got to look into it. And do you know what I mean? Because you're being told off people that you can't really reverse this is going one way. So, like, was there a moment, I suppose, where you've thought like, or you thought it could be reversible?
Yeah, I changed my thought, my brain, and my expectations that I can do something about this, and it was really, really super simple. And I think probably the period of time, to go back to what you're saying there, Alex, about it takes a bit of time, and this is something that I'm now starting to do professionally, is I think whenever you get to a situation, you're going to react, but if you can somehow get to the positive bias and not to the negative bias, I can talk about that later if you want. But why that takes time is you need to build up a habit so that your body and your brain expects that. And building up a habit takes time. Also, to know what habit to build up, you need to have knowledge, and it took me time to gain the knowledge. Some of that was external, some of that was just from my own self-thought. So I had the diagnosis, Jesus. And then there's right, okay, look, we're just going to crack on, but you're not going to be sad or be depressed or anxious about this, which of course is totally the natural thing to do. That was a conscious decision. And it took me a while then to garner the knowledge, and then to know enough to make something a habit, to switch my expectation in my body and my brain that there's going to be something that works to fix this. And that was all happening concurrently. I don't know if I was fully conscious of that. I'd say I definitely wasn't.
Series of events come in, and
it is. And obviously that they're then drifting into the placebo effect and a lot of neuroscience, which I know a lot about now, but I knew nothing about then. And I think you just get to a point where I had the combination of all that, and then they had the point where it was just too intolerable, and I believed in my mind that I could do something about it.
You know what this reminds me of, and it's not the same at all, but this is where the only way I can relate really is, do you know, in any form of procrastination, and the one that I've probably got the most experience of due to my job is when people want to lose body fat.
Yeah.
And actually, when you first put on a little bit of body fat, you might put a couple of pounds on and you go, that's all right, it's a couple of pounds, I can easily lose that. And then you put on half a stone and it'll be, I can still lose that. And actually some people will gain 2 or 3 stone before they'll go, shit, I need to do something about it. And it's a lot further back. It's a long way back.
Yeah.
But they won't act until it goes to that point. Do you know what I mean? And I find that with procrastination as well, generally. And it's what you've just said. It's information gathering phase. It's having the knowledge. What do I need to change, first of all? How am I going to change it? When am I going to change it? And I think there's a bit of that in there.
Totally. And if you see pictures of me immediately prior to starting what I started to do, I call that the Tony Soprano years. I'd gained all that weight and was a big Teletubby. And so male friends at a boys' ski trip nicknamed me Tony Soprano, and it kind of stuck. So, but anyway, yeah. So I did then act, and I think I definitely had a pivot point, and somebody really pushed me on this in an interview recently, and he said, "Well, tell me about your worst day. Like, tell me what was your worst day, and was that the moment?" And the way he worded the question made me think, and I thought, shit, that was the pivot point, that was the turnaround point. And my worst day was pulled up on the road outside my office, got out it's just like a B-class road, but there's 2 lanes of traffic. Got out of the car, but maybe there's oncoming traffic. So I just opened the door slightly, and then, as I normally did, sort of skinnied out as best I could. But my as I turned around, was about to shut the door, my body just froze, my left leg stuck to it. And I then stumbled onto the second lane of the road. And thankfully there was no other vehicle coming. But if there was, I don't know how you would have survived that.
Yeah.
And I was a bit shaken by thought, went, shit, that wasn't good. And then later on the day, I think it was actually at the back end of the day, as I'm talking to you, I'm standing at the Marks and Spencer's food bag, and I had nipped down to Marks and Spencer's food, which is, I walked down, it's just down the road from my office. And I was standing talking to somebody I knew, just, beside the tomatoes on an aisle. And the person I was talking to said, Scott, you know that you're wetting yourself. And it emptied my bladder was starting to trickle down onto the floor of Marks and Spencer's. That was a bad day. So yeah, I think that was a combination of what I've just said. And it was like, shit, this is really starting to mess my life up a bit.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't act that day, but it was, it was in the round
like a
that
turning
period.
point, pivotal.
Yeah.
So come on then, let's get to the good stuff then. So come on, what did you do? What did you do?
Well, come on to the good stuff, but let's not ignore that mental choice and my mindset. And that's really part of the good stuff. All right, okay. So I think the reason why it worked was I went what I call super crayons, so no sharp instruments and nothing technical. You're a personal trainer, right?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So my pecs, if I want to get my pecs stronger, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a bench press or yada, yada, yada. If you want to get fitter for a marathon, my daughter starts training for a marathon at the minute. She's having to do a lot of cardio work and cardiovascular to get her metabolic conditioning. So everything and all your clients, if they want to get something to perform better and improve and enhance the body part, I'm going to guess what reps they should do, what they should do physically. You do, right? Okay. Yeah. So here's my super simple version. My brain, a part of it, it's a physical part of my body, isn't fit and strong and performing optimally. Mm-hmm. Not sure if that came out right. So I'm going to say, I'm going to work it out. I'm going to see if I can work that out, just like a bench press would do my pecs. And what I mean by that is I'm going to start exercising intensely, but I really want to work out the part of my brain that I know is creating my Parkinson symptoms. And I just thought, right, let's do intense physical exercise where at exactly the same time, I'm having to think really intensely. And it was as simple as that. Could that then, as I'm on a punch bag and my brain's listening to commands, could my substantia nigra, my wee part of my brain that's the problem with this whole thing, might it like be flexing away and get fitter and stronger? And it was as simple as that. And that's what I did. So I didn't start with running. We had also, by the way, it was lockdown 1. I just started. So that limited what I could do, but it also meant I was very time rich. Yeah. I wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't going to coach rugby. I coached rugby. So I had nothing but time. I had an abundance of that. So that was good. So rather than jump on the spin bike in the back room, rather than jump on a cross trainer, which we also had in the house, I ignored all that because, the 3 of us, if we jump on a bike, we'll go down to the shops and chat away. You wouldn't even have to think about it, would we? So I ignored all that. So I started with boxing and then listening to instructions with dumbbells and kettlebells, basically doing stuff that I didn't know how to do or I couldn't do very efficiently. And I did it whilst physically exhausted. And it was as simple as that. I call it cognitively intense training.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, I stuck my phone on the wall of the garage I had a punch bag in the back of the garage, hung it up, headphones on, very similar to the situation I'm in right now. And I listened to instructions. So you think about it, jab, uppercut, cross, you're having to follow instructions. But as you go from beginners to advanced, you go through the courses, your body, you get really fatigued. And then I could literally feel my brain hurting because I really pushed myself physically. And I could really feel my brain hurt. I'm going, oh my God, and just everything was going to shit. And yes, part of it was because I was tired. And that's what happens when we get fatigued, isn't it? But, I just kept on going. I really focused on listening to instructions and trying to ignore my physical fatigue of the rest of my body. And yeah, that was the basis of my logic. And
it's interesting that, and so you're getting your mind strong. I'm just thinking, like, as I'm listening, how often I actually do things like that. Do you know what I mean? I was in the office the other day and I was showing Olivia an exercise that I do at the gym, and it was just, like that dead bugs one, Alex, where you put one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite arm and the opposite leg.
Yeah.
And my daughter were going, and she really struggled with it. And I thought, I used to really struggle with this one. And it's the fact that when I was doing it, I was really using my brain to
coordinate it.
Like, and to some people, that's really easy. I found it really difficult, but I'd imagine that kind of thinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally know. That's a brilliant example. And I actually did it 2 weeks ago at CrossFit. I hadn't done it in ages. It was part of the warm up. And I was just chatting to somebody during the warm, and I'm going, oh no, I'm not doing this right. I said, Gemma, I'm going to stop talking here. And I had to think about it. So that's a great example, but it's a really important point as well that I was going to come on to. Whenever people talk to me, they say, but you were relatively fit. I was only what, 53, 54 at that point. My dad is 71, 72. So the cognitively intense bit and the physical intensity, I really believe it's where you start from.
I was just going to say, I mean, that will look different to everybody. If you've come from an athletic background, you can probably challenge yourself quite significantly. But if you're somebody who's old and you're getting a lot older and you've slowed down anyway, it might just be difficult to coordinate a march holding some weights over your head. So,
but that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah,
Alex,
that's what I mean. You start where you are.
Yeah, you start where you are. So wherever your needle is on the dial.
Yeah.
Maybe I was at 4 and, got to drifting into the red. I don't think it makes any difference.
Yeah, so, start where you are and get better.
Yeah, start where you are. Well, in general health terms, yes, of course. But, cognition. So Lisa, maybe somebody's 72-year-old father, and I've had lots of conversations like that. Maybe it starts with dead bugs. You can do something that is cognitively challenging, and maybe you can't do a box jump up, and maybe you can't do a burpee, but you can do a simple step up.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe that, the number of clients that I have when they come to me is another example. And just like you say, a simple step, a box step, but even an ordinary step, stepping on, get your other leg on, and then step off with the same leg that you stepped on with. You wouldn't believe how challenging some people find that, stepping on and off with the same leg. So they go up and then they step off with the other leg, and you have to go, no, go back, step off with the leg you got on with. And I think you're right. It's that whole idea of just getting them to think about, it's moving with the intention of following the instruction. That sounds like the important bit.
In my opinion, that's the magic sauce. On
I'm even going
on
like
the physical aspect
your
of
hand on your head, and do you know what I mean? Like
to
going right down to like tapping your head and what's it called, that?
Rubbing your tummy.
Rubbing your tummy.
Does anybody want to fire up the birdie song and see how we get on here? But joking aside, no, okay, don't. So so I think my my comment to, yeah, but you were 53, my dad's 72. And yeah, I think that that can be addressed. Where my story first hit mainstream media was a profile that CrossFit did. We'll come on to CrossFit in a minute, but they did a series. I think it was this time 3 years ago, might have been 2 years ago, and it was called The Magic of CrossFit. And CrossFit is all regarded as, you know, people who are immaculately, amazingly fit, and, you know, all the Instagram, you know, like all the Insta wankers and all looking beautiful and posing for the pictures. Like, you know, CrossFit gets a bit of a bad name at times, you know, and the games is an amazing um event of athleticism, but that's the World Championships, that's the Olympics. You know, 98% of the whatever it is, 13,000 CrossFit gyms across the globe, they are, you know, they're just small businesses and they're just normal people, you know. But getting to the point, so the magic of CrossFit profiled, I think it was a half a dozen people throughout the world. And it was to demonstrate that it's not all about the insta wankers and the top 3% who get to the world championships. And my favorite person I was one of the 6 people profiled, was there's this lady called Annie, and she's Auburn, New Jersey, Auburn, New York, anyway, East Coast America. All right. And whenever she was filmed, it was a week for her 93rd birthday. And she stopped smoking at 87. Amazing. And then her daughter or granddaughter dragged her along to a CrossFit gym. And just Google Annie CrossFit, and, you know, and it was just amazing. And it was just, maybe it was just getting up onto that step, but she was thinking as well, you know.
I mean, it's the intentional doing it, and like, you know, using your brain for all that. I know we're kind of coming towards the end of time, and I don't want to rush you too much.
We're not even halfway through.
I know, this is the problem. We're gonna have a part 2. However, in part 1 now, so let's just go from, what was your success there now? So you've taken up the CrossFit. You've gone from, basically, you've had this episode of bladder incontinence. You've had an episode where potentially you could have lost your life in traffic. What's been the journey then, and how's that impacted your life? Where are you now with your symptoms?
Okay, the elevator pitch on this is I started doing cognitively intense training. I did that for 9 months at home. My symptoms really started to slow down and disappear. And I'm thinking, Jesus, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. And then I plateaued, and I plateaued either because I wasn't being challenged, or I just, you know, you get bored of doing the same stuff. This was all because of lockdowns. And then I joined CrossFit literally the day that that Boris, God bless his soul, let us go to gyms again, and
took us off our grounding.
And I joined CrossFit. The reason for doing that was I knew it was really intense, and I knew it was always constantly varied, always did different stuff. I'd never been to it. I just was Googling this, and every day something different. And so that to me I discovered that it was the logical step. So I went in and I continued to do that. So I was going in, and like day 1, day 2, you look at the whiteboard and you see what you're doing that day, the workout of the day, the wall, and you just go, oh my God, I don't even understand what it says. What is a half Turkish get up with a blah, 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 blah. So I just thought, brilliant, my brain's hurting before my body's hurting. Yeah. So I then did that for 6 months, and my symptoms started going down, 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 down. So just to recap, so body cramps, loss of control of arms, legs, urinary incontinence, total sleep deprivation, cramps, like dancing away like Elvis at night, and body was going all over the place, could fall out of the bed. God knows, upside down in the bed. Who knew? I certainly didn't know. Erectile dysfunction, brain fog. Yeah, that was March 20, going into lockdown. And then by Halloween 2021, so a short 18 months, none of those symptoms were present, and to this day are not. And what are we in now? We're recording 25? This in March 25. So 3 years and 5 months later, I don't have those symptoms.
this is a question of belief now, right? I'm just going to ask your opinion. Do you believe that you can stay symptom free?
Yes.
And you will, probably, because of that simple, I believe, so I'm going to work hard to do it. I think the difference with you and somebody else is 90% your mindset. That's my opinion.
I agree. And that's why I made a point of sort of making a big point of, in those first few weeks, your body.
I know we've missed like we say, we've scratched the surface right now. Just one other little thing that I'm interested in. I'm interested in loads more, but one other thing for today.
Yeah.
Has your diet changed since your diagnosis? Do you eat differently? And if so, is there a reason for that?
It is. And I haven't been consistent on that. But at the start of it, I did something known as time restricted eating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called fasting. My intention, my purpose of that was to help with weight loss.
Right.
But I now have knowledge and would believe that actually that was a good part of the process, and what your body does to the bad parts of your body whenever you're in a state of fast. No, like I didn't go out to the desert and fast for 40 days or anything like that.
Oh, you're not
It's like 10-hour windows. And you're still allowed a drink on a Saturday night. I know probably shouldn't say that on a Be Sober podcast. What I'm saying is I was really good 80% of the time.
8 to 20, yeah.
I'm generally pretty good on, well, I really don't eat processed food. I'm pretty good on that still.
Yeah.
Because God knows what crap the food companies are putting into food. And they
don't know the cause of things like Parkinson's, do they? So
no.
Who knows?
Well, and I think from what's hitting my news feed the last 2 or 3 months, I think it is probably going to be stem cell therapy is going to fix it. There's a lot of excitement about that, and there seems to be a consensus view building that it starts in the gut.
But as now they're finding that most, that gut-brain barrier thing that's going on, they're saying it's the second brain down there. So,
why is it all of a sudden changing? Why is Parkinson's on the rise? Why is it the fastest growing disease in the Western world? Is it because of the shit that we're putting in our bodies and our processed foods? I was in Stockholm 3 years ago, and I was symptom free. 2, 3. Anyway, yeah. Whenever I was symptom free, and the Swedes are great people. But the point I'm getting to, we were about to go out to one of the islands in the archipelago, and we had to go to like a small local supermarket to buy food. So we were hunting around for somewhere the 24 hours before, and in the supermarket in Sweden, anything that was American food was in a totally separate section, because the contents and the disclosure warnings in no way met Swedish standards. So it was kind of like, if you want this shit, it's over there in the naughty boys corner, but it's in a special section, like tobacco, like alcohol. And I remember saying that, and I went, ooh, that's kind of strong. That tells us a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's probably a load more here that we haven't touched upon today that you want to share.
Yeah.
If we ask the question, obviously we've not got another hour, but if we ask the question of, is there anything that you feel that's really significant that you want to share? Do you want that opportunity now just to tell us anything that you feel we've not touched upon, including, where people can find you and what you're doing?
Right. Okay. Thanks for that opportunity. Yes. Recognize what you've got. Be curious about the possibilities that you can improve. Let's take Parkinson's off the table. Yes, this is my journey for Parkinson's, but this is for anything. Being better husband, wife, being good, better in the boardroom, better on a tennis court, or dealing with chronically ill relatives or being chronically ill. Be curious about getting better and get yourself a bit of knowledge and keep on increasing that knowledge. And try then from that knowledge to be positive and do something that is a habit that switches your mindset from being always to the negative bias. Try to get away from the victim mentality and slowly swing it to the positive bias, and then do the reps on what you believe or what your knowledge has led you to believe will maybe improve it, and change your mental expectation. And then do the reps And I think you'll be quite surprised. I think something I've really learned a lot about recently is the brain and the expectation and that mindset shift. And I think you obviously your penultimate question there is, am I going to stay symptom free? I just think that's massive. And I think the world at the minute really, and the media and arguably the governments, like always forces us to the negative bias, but what the brain can do and the expectation is, that's a huge part. So that's probably starting to waffle on with my answer, but that's what I'd encourage you to do. Final question, ladies, if I may, on expectation.
Yeah.
Why can you not tickle yourself?
Oh, because it's coming. You can't
Lisa,
tickle yourself.
why can you not tickle yourself?
I don't know. I hate being tickled, me as well. I absolutely hate it.
It's a true thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
why can you not make yourself laugh?
Is it because you're like, well, I don't know. Why you can't go on.
here's my opinion, and like obviously what I've read and studied, because of your brain's expectations. What your brain expects is what your life will experience.
Yeah.
And why can you not tickle yourself is the super crayons version of that. And that includes getting worse at Parkinson's or not, that, having a shit day or having a fab day. Because if I lift my fingers to my tickly parts of my body, my brain's expecting it. So it's not going to make me tickle. That's why you can't tickle yourself. It's your brain and it's your expectations. Shift those. You can do amazing things.
I love that,
people...
Scott.
Oh, go on. I was going to say.
I just want to say I love it, and I think it fits in so beautifully with this series because the last episode we had on was Anna, the mountain girl, and we were talking about how words and the things that we say and how powerful they are. Like words are like spells, and I've always used from being little. My mum taught me about affirmations, and they get a bit of a bad rep in the fluffy world of like affirmations, but actually they are so powerful. And if you can say them and until you believe them, and I think it's really similar to what we were saying with Anna last week. And
it is.
Yeah.
It's that thing, isn't it? There's that saying of tell yourself you can, tell yourself you can't. You're right.
Absolutely.
It's true. It really, really is true. And it's so nice to kind of, and I'm not saying, there's going to be people out there, and like you're saying about getting out of the victim mode, and it's important. And you are proof here right now. You have reversed your Parkinson's symptoms because of your mindset and because of the exercises. Is there anything else before we go? I'm just thinking if anybody sat there like, what?
So there is.
I want to kind of just end it with
your summary there. Just give me the fear, because I'm concerned I'm going to come across like an arrogant douchebag. So mine's Parkinson's, and I understand why people who are chronically ill do feel anxious and depressed and like that. Please, I don't think this is about being Billy Big Balls and like smashing something really massive.
Yeah.
Maybe your needle moving is just leaving your flat or apartment.
Yeah.
Maybe just using public transport. Maybe just going to the shop, buying a pint of milk, being out in public in crowds. If your achievement is to be able to do that, where today that you can't, I think the process of trying to be a bit curious as to the fact that you might be able to do it and to have a bit of knowledge and to do the reps and build a habit. So my final thing is, I think this is really relevant. Please don't think I'm an arrogant douchebag, although you've probably made your mind up on that already. But
I don't think you've come across in any way as an arrogant
good.
douchebag. I really don't.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So as long as you're moving the needle forward, if your starting point is that step up and step down the same foot, or leaving your apartment in crowds, or not having a drink, or not having a joint, or not having a line. It doesn't matter where you are and what you are. I think what you've discussed, and clearly what a lot of this series has discussed, that can do it. Also, thrivehappens.com, Instagram, thrive_happens. Thank you.
We'll share your links, Scott. You're an incredible, inspiring human. Thank you so much for being on.
Okay, that's very kind of you to say. Lisa, Alex,
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
See you later.